And I certainly don't get to see any giraffes because that's so far out the algorithm, it's highly unlikely they're ever going to serve me a giraffe. Hi, it's Russ from Production Expert, and today I want to talk about collaboration, but not the kind we hear about a lot these days, because collaboration has become almost a technology term for things like connecting to somebody over the internet so that somebody in Singapore can play the bass while somebody in Glasgow can play the drums and that kind of stuff. Very useful technology, and I'm not disparaging it by saying that. Or we've got Dropbox and all those kind of things now, which mean you don't have to leave the studio. But I want to tell you that this week I learned a really valuable lesson, but I need to rewind a bit with a personal story. The last time I saw my dad was in 2019. I'd gone to visit him and Mom for Christmas. They live on in England, which is the mainland of Great Britain. I live in Ireland, Northern Ireland, so I have to take a short flight from Belfast over to Birmingham. On this day, it was pretty windy. In fact, gales were forecast, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get back home. It was raining and all that kind of stuff, but I managed to make it to the airport and got onto the plane, and at which point the pilots told us it was going to be bumpy. I think that was a euphemism for hell, because the flight over was pretty scary. And that wasn't the scariest part of the journey, because the flight into Belfast City Airport is down a lock, which many of you will think of as an inlet. It comes right into Belfast Harbour from the North Sea, and the plane has to fly for about a mile down that over that water with the hills on one side and land on the other side. And it attracts crosswinds even on the gentlest of days. And on this night, we were flying and it was dark, it was pouring with rain. We weren't sure which direction the plane was flying in. I'm glad the pilots did, but it was pretty bumpy. And he warned us we were going to have a bumpy landing. And when you've done that flight as many times as I have, you kind of count your way into the airport, and you fly over certain landmarks. There's a hotel called the Culloden, and then there's a town called Hollywood, not the American one. It's got one L. And then you go over IKEA. And that's almost the last thing you see before you land. And I was counting those things in, thinking nearly on the ground, nearly on the ground, nearly on the ground. And at the very last minute, the engines just burst into life again. And we went steaming back up into the air at full speed. It was really quite frightening. And when I got home, I realized this is what they call a go around. And a go around is when the pilot doesn't think the landing is safe enough and they go around and try again. Now, for about the next 5 minutes, it was just silence. We weren't sure what was happening. The plane was still jumping around. We were all still worried about what was going to happen. And who knows what was going to happen. It was really frightening. We eventually landed on the second attempt, but that was the moment when I got off the ground and did the kind of Pope thing and kissed the tarmac, because that was the night I thought game over. And probably part then COVID hit, and COVID took my father. My father died of COVID. It took 6 days start to finish for COVID to kill my father. And sadly, because of the restrictions we had at the time, I had to say goodbye over FaceTime. And you don't forget that. So we had COVID, we had that terrible plane flight. And just generally, I kind of got used to being what you call a studio hermit. Why did I need to leave the studio? I've got all the tech I need. I can connect with people over a million different messaging apps, all that kind of stuff. So I can be pretty self-sufficient. I used to joke with people that I would go to any meeting as long as I didn't have to leave the house. And I kind of got used to it. And if I had a problem in the studio or couldn't figure out a piece of software, or there was a technical challenge, I could just jump on YouTube or jump on Google and find the answer quite quickly. And this week I was invited to get back on a plane. And I've been on planes since. I've been on vacations a few times, but this was the first time I really took traveling for meeting other people and sort of getting connected seriously. So my friend Nia and Danny, friends Nia and Danny from Sound Radix, had said, Russ, we'd like to come to London and hang out with you and take you out for dinner and a few other things, which was a fantastic invitation. And I love those guys. They're some of the smartest and nicest guys on the planet, the guys that make Sound Radix plugins. And so I said yes. And so I flew in on Sunday night. We had an amazing few days. We visited Pinewood, they visited Abbey Road. I've been before, but I had to get back for a meeting, so I missed the Abbey Road visit. We went to Strong Room, we went to Air Studios, we met up with some really cool people like Jonas Wessling and Don Morley and Rick Simpson from Coldplay. It was a really great trip. And it reminded me how essential it is to have real collaboration, real physical, that we can become studio hermits. We can think we're self-sufficient and it's the same as doing it with real people. I have to tell you, it's not. It's a con. It's useful, but it's not the best option, I don't believe. Let me talk about technology when it comes to messaging. Some of you will be aware there's a thing called push-pull technology in messaging. Pull technology is when you request the messages, and push technology is when they just appear. Most of us are used to push technology these days, where just messages pop up when we want them. But there was a time when we would have to hit a button to get our emails, to collect our emails. You have to hit send and receive. These days, it just appears. And I want to compare those two things because I've kind of been living in a pull technology world when it comes to learning and experience, because anytime I needed an answer to something, I'd go on YouTube or I'd go on Google, and all I was actually learning was the stuff I thought I needed to know, or the stuff I thought mattered to me and the mattered in that moment, mattered for that project. And then I think, well, that doesn't matter. When I go on YouTube or if I go on Facebook, then that gives me a world at the end of my fingertips. The trouble is, they're algorithm-based worlds. They're worlds based upon my behavior, based upon my tastes and my preferences. I've got a dog called Buddy. I take him down the beach every day. It's fantastic. I love dogs. So guess what? I get served a lot on YouTube and on other social media. Yes, you guessed it, dogs. I'm not a fan of cats. If you own a cat, forgive me, but I'm not a friend of cats. You probably hate dogs. So let's call it even. So I don't get to see many cat videos or many cat posts or cat charity requests. And I certainly don't get to see any giraffes, because that's so far out the algorithm, it's highly unlikely they're ever going to serve me a giraffe as part of my feed. Might be nice. I like giraffes, actually. I think they're pretty cool animals. And the problem with that world is I only get to see, it's a big echo chamber. It's just more of me, more of my taste, more of my preferences, more of my opinions. Because on social media, they're just serving me stuff that they know I agree with. And so it's highly unlikely to be challenged with in taste terms, in a piece of music I probably wouldn't ever listen to, or any of that. And I think that's really bad. And I've been challenged about it this week. A couple of examples. We went to Air Studios and we met up with Barry Grant, who's a master of mastering, a mastering guru, a mastering expert. Call him what you like, but he's one of the best in the game. And he showed us while we were there an album that had been a vinyl that had been mastered and cut in the conventional sense of the word. And then he showed us half speed mastering and cutting. And when I first heard the first vinyl, I've never been interested in vinyl. I knew it as a kid. And so I've never it's not that I'm against it. I just haven't seen any need for it. But he played us first the vinyl that had been done in a conventional manner. And it was okay. It was good. The music was okay. The top end was a bit crunchy and the dynamics were a bit okay. But it just reminded me why I wasn't that bothered about vinyl. Then he played us the half-speed version. It was light and it was night and day. It was dynamics there. The top end was sweet. It was just a completely different experience. Can I tell you, a few minutes before Barry doing that, I'd had no interest whatsoever in half-speed mastering. I didn't even think about it. And suddenly it was part of my experience. More than that, I then wanted to know why it worked and what made the difference. And Barry explained it to us, and it was incredibly helpful. So that's something I've now got, an experience I've got that I wouldn't have ever gone looking for, but it came looking for me in that moment. The day before, we'd been with Jonas Wessling in what I have to say is one of the best sounding mix rooms I've ever been in. He's got key tops and key BXTs, and he's tuned it, and it sounds absolutely incredible. And he played us some stuff from movie scores, and he played us some really intimate stuff, and we were just, our mouths were wide open. At that moment, we then started saying, how did you get that guitar sound? How did they? And he'd talk about compression techniques, he'd talk about reverb. And we then started sharing different music that we loved. And I played a track from the Sean Colvin album, A Few Small Repairs. Get it. It's one of the best albums ever. And it just gives you some really cool mixing ideas. In fact, I can often dissect an album and figure out how they did it. That's one of the albums that has got still some secrets to me I've never figured out. And we all sat there saying, how did they do that guitar part? How did they make the guitar sound like that? And we were having discussions about it. That never happens when I'm on my own. I don't go discovering. This stuff was finding me. So yes, it's cool these days to have Dropbox and messaging and all those really cool collaboration apps where you can talk to people all over the world while you're mixing for them and stuff. But there's no substitute for really meeting up with people, for getting new experiences, for getting new ideas, for being challenged in your thinking. And it's really, really challenged me this week that I'm going to start getting on planes again. I'm going to start traveling again. I'm going to start going to trade shows, because the thing we think about is, well, why would I go to NAM or AES these days? Because you can see the gear anywhere. Yes, but you can't meet up with the people. You can't get new ideas. There's no giraffes. And I think I'm a lot richer for being with people for a few days than I ever will be just sitting in my little studio, being a creative hermit and thinking that the internet has all the answers. I don't think it does. And I'd encourage you that if you're like me and you've been sort of like stuck in your little creative ghetto, in your little studio, thinking, this is it, I don't need anybody else, I've got every sample I need, every loop I need, every plugin I need, I want to say, I don't think that's true. I think it's only half the answer to creativity, because when we get with other people, it all just bubbles up and new things happen. Hope that's been an encouragement to do it. Go do it. I'll see you again soon.